Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to take a look at a very exciting sector, specifically the sector of humanoid robots. So I've now invested in 3 specific stocks and taken a position in them. I'll be showing you what these companies are, or rather how they play a role in this particular sector. And most importantly, I'll also cover where these stocks currently stand and how they are valued. That's crucial for assessing the overall situation and determining how interesting they might be for an investment. I've picked out 3 stocks. The general issue with humanoid robot stocks is that there aren't many pure plays in this space. And I actually found one in China, which I've now positioned quite a bit larger, but we'll discuss that shortly. First, of course, the risk disclaimer. Everything I say is not a buy or sell recommendation or financial advice, but simply my own opinion. So let's dive into the humanoid robot industry in general. Where do we come from and where are we headed? And yes, the research, or rather the history of humanoid robots, has actually been ongoing for many years. And the problem was primarily the fine motor skills and the dexterity in robots, that they can operate just like us humans, or rather also operate in terms of quality and also in terms of speed, can operate just like we humans do. And if you look at the videos available online, you can now see significant progress, and the next few years will be especially exciting because I believe we're now entering the scaling phase. We are already seeing with individual robots, or rather humanoid robot companies, that they are now landing bigger deals. The first ones are already being deployed in factories, and the biggest problems, especially with fine motor skills in the hand, for example, or with balance, have actually been more or less solved. And now that we've clearly witnessed significant advancements in AI, we also observe that robots are becoming increasingly intelligent. This means that the cost associated with robot intelligence has significantly decreased, and that significantly fuels this boom in this sector even further. So let's get into the first stock that I invested in. Of course, none of this is investment advice, and the first stock we're looking at is Teradyne. Teradyne isn't a classic humanoid robot stock, but generally it's a robot stock. JJ, just if you want to summarize it that way. Well, essentially, this company is deeply rooted in the field of automation, and here you can already observe the stock price, how it has quite significantly soared. And yes, the robotics sector has really gained momentum in recent weeks and months, and you can already see that here in the stocks. I had been watching this stock for a bit longer. Back then, it was still under $80. And yes, that's how quickly things can change when a trend starts to slip away from you a little bit. And consequently, I have decided to at least get myself positioned in this particular stock. Clearly not the most opportune moment, to put it that way, as there's certainly a risk of a considerable pullback. If we take a closer look at the valuation, we can see that we have a price to sales ratio of 16 and a price to earnings ratio of 90. That is quite substantial indeed. And if we then consider the fundamental key figures, we'll also notice quite a few positive aspects. Firstly, that we now have a good free cash flow again. I hope that we will naturally continue to see positive trends here in the coming quarters, and which I strongly believe, because a lot of money will now flow into the sector, and the robotics sector will also become one of the largest in the world over the next years and decades. We're also seeing another good jump in the net profit margin. That's already very good, to put it that way. The valuation is, of course, extremely generous, and the revenue growth isn't even that high when compared to the valuation. So you could say the stock is really very expensive, but it's right in the middle of a hype, and that could certainly continue. However, if the stock were to double again here within a very short period, I would definitely have to reconsider my position, because then it would truly become somewhat absurdly expensive. Nevertheless, it is a hyped market that also produces expensive stocks, which doesn't exactly make it any easier to decide whether to invest right now. And I've just decided to open a partial position here. That means if the stock corrects sharply again around $200, I will buy more. What's also striking is that the net debt here, negative net debt, means having surplus cash that is decreasing. And this clearly leads to the conclusion that they are now significantly increasing their investment in the business, yes, specifically into production, in order to truly benefit from the rapid increase, or rather the growth in demand that is expected in the coming years. Yes, Teradyne, if we take a look at the forecast from the analysts, it has more or less already reached its price target. And if we consider the revenue development, we can also observe significant leaps here. In 2026, 4.2 billion, it's then projected to rise to 6 billion by 2028. That is already very, very substantial, and the stock is currently pricing that in, which is why it's climbing so steeply. Let's now turn our attention to the next stock. This particular one is almost my absolute favorite because it is in fact a monopolist in the entire sector of suppliers, and that is Harmonic Drive Systems. They produce these precise drives for the joints, and they are the market leader in this area. This means without Harmonic Drive Systems, that particular sector essentially cannot operate. The stock and the company itself were quite battered by overcapacities, but this management is very, very positive that these will be reduced, and the stock is currently on the rise. And if we cross the 5,000 Japanese yen mark here, the stock should also have good chances, similar to Teradyne, to move towards its all-time high. And that all-time high is right here at just under 10,000 Japanese yen. So there's easily 100% potential in this stock by 2026. That's why I'll be adding more. I've already bought a decent position. I want to mention that again here. So I'm more significantly invested here than in my typical standard positions. And if we take a closer look at the valuation, it's quite interesting that the stock, based on its financial figures, specifically its price to sales ratio, isn't really all that cheap. Indeed, a price to sales ratio of 7 is already quite high if you consider it in isolation. But when you consider it from a historical perspective, it's actually moderate, or more or less right around the average. This means that if more growth is currently being priced into the market, then considerably higher valuations will also become acceptable. Consequently, I expect that for Harmonic Drive Systems, price to sales ratios exceeding 10 will then be paid for the shares. The PE ratio looks similar, but with the market regaining momentum and consequently boosting margins, I am optimistic that we should see a corresponding upward trend, especially in the net profit margin and hopefully also in the gross margin. Let's look at the analysts' forecast. Here we basically see the same thing. The stock has actually reached the price target for the analysts' 1-year forecast. I'm a bit more bullish, as I believe the stock is still flying under the radar, and we must not forget it's a monopolist. Without Harmonic Drive Systems technology, humanoid robots of this quality wouldn't exist. That's why I've taken a large position. I expect a lot from this stock accordingly. And if it should actually fall below 3,000 Japanese yen again, I will buy more, because for me, it's only a matter of time until this stock should be significantly higher again. So let's move on to the next stock. But before we discuss that, a quick note, please subscribe and give a thumbs up to support my channel if you enjoy it and don't want to miss any future videos. And then we'll take a look at the next stock, and this is actually a company that genuinely builds humanoid robots, and that company is UBTech Robotics. I find this Chinese company to be very, very exciting. It's a pioneer in a certain sense in the field of humanoid robotics, and they already have several established product lines. And what I also found to be very interesting, the news that came out recently, is that Airbus has in fact placed an order for 10,000 of these humanoid robots, and a considerable number more are expected to follow in due course. So let's take a look at the stock now and check out its share price. It hasn't been listed on the exchange for very long, so let's switch to the daily chart here. And here we see clearly the price to sales ratio is relatively high, but that's also because the company generates relatively low or essentially negligible revenue. Excuse me, it is revenue, of course. That's why the price to sales ratio is currently so elevated. However, with the deals now increasingly being finalized within the business sector, specifically with companies in the B2B segment, I believe that the corresponding valuation here will also begin to decrease, and that the stock, in my opinion, is about to gain significant momentum and then establish a really solid upward trend. And generally in this sector, it must be said that if the whole thing gets into the media, you really shouldn't underestimate the hype factor, because that can then give the shares a significant boost. I'm invested now. The analysts' forecasts have also more or less been met. There's not much upside left there, but I think especially if UBTech announces further news on partnerships and corresponding orders, then the stock should be further boosted. I believe that in this area as well, we will observe quite positive upward trends in 2026 and in the subsequent years. Fundamentally, one should always keep the valuation in mind, and with irrational overvaluations, perhaps take some chips off the table. That means realizing profits, a bit of rebalancing, and being more active. I believe that's generally quite important in the current market phase. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Please comment on what you think of the stocks. And a big thank you again to the channel members who give me the freedom to make more content for you. And since I was a bit sick last week, I'll now try to make more videos for you again and shed light on various other areas. I've wanted to do the uranium sector for a long time. That's next. And for gold and silver, we'll of course look at the production costs. So where will the gold and silver prices stabilize? Therefore, many exciting topics are still ahead. That's why please feel free to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I wish you much success and goodbye for now.